The problem with this humanoid robot. I want to start with a simple question. Why does it feel like the robots we're building still don't behave like robots? Not like the humanoid robots you see in movies or on flashy launch stages, but real, reliable machines that just work. I mean, work in a way that helps people day in and day out, not just for a demo video or a Kickstarter campaign. Right up front, I want to say something obvious but easy to overlook. Building humanoid robots that look like humans is hard. I don't mean hard compared to folding laundry. I mean orders of magnitude harder than most people realize. And there's one problem in particular that always seems to be at the center of this gap between expectation and reality. It's not power supplies, it's not AI models, and it's not even parts cost. The real problem, the sticky bit, is contextual, physical intelligence. And before we go further, let me unpack that in a grounded way. Humans have this thing where we can walk into a room, look around, see a bunch of unfamiliar objects, and without hesitation, figure out where to step, how to pick things up, or where to sit. We twist a doorknob, we switch a light on, we reach into a shelf without knocking everything down. A robot can see all those things too, in some sense. It has cameras, sensors, even fancy machine learning. But it can't effortlessly interpret all of that and act in a way that's genuinely reliable. Let me give you a simple example. You've probably dropped your keys on your couch before. You sit, pick them up, and set them on the coffee table. No problem. But if you asked a humanoid robot to pick up keys on a soft surface like a couch cushion, most of them would either miss entirely or crush the keys into the fabric by squeezing too hard. That doesn't sound like much until you think about how many different surfaces there are in a home. Plush, rough, ridged, soft, slippery, sticky. We don't even think about it, but our brains and muscles handle all that variation all the time. Humanoids struggle because they haven't internalized the massive set of physical rules we take for granted. And I don't mean physically internalized in some philosophical sense. I literally mean they lack the practical, moment-to-moment physical intuition that comes from evolution in decades of real-world learning. Now, you might be wondering, but Richard, we have deep learning, big neural nets, reinforcement learning. Isn't that enough? It's a fair question, and this is where the conversation often gets fuzzy. Those tools are powerful, without question. They've transformed perception tasks, like recognizing objects in a photo, and they've helped robots get better at narrow tasks in controlled environments. But when you take a humanoid robot out of a controlled lab and tell it to operate in a real home, the performance drops off quickly. Why? Because most of these learning systems are trained in constrained settings or simulators that can't capture the full messiness of the physical world. There's an old saying in robotics, the real world laughs at your simulation. And it does. Simulators don't replicate soft materials, irregular lighting, cluttered spaces, or the nuanced feedback you feel when your fingertip grazes a coffee mug. So here we are with robots that have brains that are smart in some ways, but in terms of applied physical common sense, they're still toddlers wearing oversized sneakers on a gravel driveway. And every time we try to make them perform more complicated physical tasks, that lack of real-world physical intuition becomes painfully obvious. Let's talk about walking. It seems simple, we've been doing it since we were toddlers, but walking is astonishingly complex. Your brain is constantly adjusting balance, accounting for tiny variations in the ground, shifting weight from heel to toe, all thousands of seconds a second. And your muscles are compliant, they flex and absorb shock naturally. A robot's motors, on the other hand, are rigid. They don't feel the ground in the same way, and they don't inherently adjust unless we build incredibly complicated control systems to approximate that flexibility. And even then, those systems are fragile, meaning they work in carefully prepared environments, but fail when the floor has unexpected bumps or objects. Walking isn't even the worst part. Now think about interacting with objects, like picking up a cup of coffee. That sounds easier, right? Grab something and lift it. But humans do all of this nuanced sensing. We feel the weight, anticipate the slipperiness, adjust our grip on the fly. A robot typically relies on vision and some force sensors, but vision doesn't tell you about weight distribution or slipperiness until after contact. So robots often either grip too hard and crush things, or too softly and let things slip. And again, we're not talking about toys here. We're talking about everyday objects that people handle without thinking. Mugs, bottles, fruits, tools. The variety of shapes, strengths, and materials is huge. And that's why a lot of humanoid robots today still look like they're auditioning for a sci-fi set. Because the step from looks humanoid to functions effectively in a typical home is bigger than most people assume. Here's another way to think about it. You know that feeling when you step on a Lego brick in the dark? Instant regret, right? Now imagine trying to build a robot that can walk over a carpet scattered with Lego bricks without falling over. That's the kind of variability real homes have, and we humans navigate that because we have years of physical experience baked into our nervous system. Robots just don't, at least not yet. And look, to be fair, there's been meaningful progress. We've seen robots that can do backflips pretty impressively. We've seen robots that can run, dance, balance on uneven terrain. And those demonstrations are fun and technically impressive, but they don't yet translate to reliable, everyday utility in unpredictable spaces. You and I both know that the value of a humanoid robot isn't in how smooth its demonstration looks on a stage. The value is in how it handles your unique, messy, real-world life. Can it carry your groceries from the car without dropping the eggs? Can it pick up laundry from the floor even when clothes in odd positions? Can it open a fridge and retrieve food without spilling? Right now, most humanoid robots struggle with those tasks because the fundamental problem, contextual physical understanding, hasn't been fully cracked. I want to make something clear here, too. I'm not claiming this is an impossible problem, far from it, but it is a problem that's still very much in the early stages of being solved, and it's one I think we talk about too rarely because it's less glamorous than flashy demos. Here's a question for you. Have you ever tried to explain to a robot what a good grip feels like? Most engineers will tell you it's not obvious. You can program a desired torque, you can sense forces, but getting that smooth, adaptive behavior that feels natural, that's still beyond most current systems. And that's precisely where the gap lies. We often focus conversations around two big areas, sensing and planning. And sure, those are important. If a robot can't see or plan, it can't act. But there's a third piece that's no less important: reactive, physical adaptation. This is the ability to change behavior in microseconds based on subtle physical feedback, the tiny slip of an object, the faint shift in balance, the unexpected give of a surface. Humans do this so seamlessly we don't even notice. Robots don't, and that's why when you ask a humanoid robot to perform a task that involves real, unpredictable physical interaction, well, it often fails in ways that feel almost cartoonish, like dropping something it should know how to hold, or stumbling on a threshold that a toddler crosses without effort. And here's something else that often gets overlooked. Context changes every second in a real environment. People move objects, floors are slippery, lighting changes, doors vary wildly from house to house, appliances are different, clutter is everywhere. A robot that works well in one home might struggle in another. That's because the robot hasn't learned the universal principles of physical interaction. It's only learned specific cases. So, what's the solution? How do we get here to there? Well, there are a few promising directions. One is more advanced sensor fusion, combining visual data with tactile sensing that's rich enough to give real-time feedback about texture, weight, and slip. If robots could feel more like we do, they could react more like we do. But that requires hardware that's both sensitive and robust, which is no small engineering challenge. Another direction is broader real-world training. This means not just simulated environments, but deploying robots in real homes and letting them learn from actual experience, the messy, unpredictable kind. This sort of learning is slow and requires safeguards, but it's where the real gains come from. Because only in the real world can robots encounter the full spectrum of physical variability that humans handle every day. There's also the question of control architecture. Right now, a lot of robot control is hierarchical. Perception feeds planning, planning feeds actuation. But in humans, it's far more integrated. Sensory feedback loops are tightly coupled with motor control. Our bodies constantly correct in real time without higher-level planning interfering. Translating that into robotics means new ways of thinking about control systems, ones that aren't just top-down, but deeply feedback-driven. But even as we explore these solutions, we have to keep something in mind. Real progress rarely looks like perfection.
People often drop into the trap of comparing robots to science fiction. That sets an impossible bar, because science fiction often ignores complexity for the sake of drama. Real robots won't be perfect out of the box. They'll be imperfect, they'll fail, and they'll teach us where the next breakthroughs need to happen. And that's okay. In fact, that's exactly how engineering has always advanced, through iteration, through confronting hard problems head-on, through learning from mistakes. Let me ask you this, what's more valuable? A robot that looks smooth in a staged video, or one that quietly helps someone with mobility challenges carry groceries up the stairs every day? I think the answer is obvious, even if it's less glamorous. Humanoid robots don't have to be flawless to be valuable, they just have to be useful. And being useful means handling the messy physical world, not just the pretty parts of it. So when people ask me, what's the problem with